Campside Media.
A few weeks ago, my 8-year-old son and I were on the way to visit my mom. My mom has Alzheimer's, and she lives on the 20th floor of a massive apartment building. So my son had recently had a fire drill at school, and he learned that you can't use the elevators when there's a fire. And he knows that my mom can't get out of her building without an elevator. As we went up the 20 floors to see her in the aging elevator, my son asked, "If there's a fire, do we just let Yaya burn?" It was one of those questions that you just don't know how to answer as a parent. I said no. But then he did press, and he said, "But she can't walk." Which, yeah. I ended up saying that a firefighter would carry her down all 20 flights of stairs. Maybe that would happen? But it brings up a big question that comes up for most people taking care of their sick and aging parents. When is it time to move them out? I'm Vanessa Grigoriadis, and this is My Parents Are Old. Today we're going to talk about the biggest financial asset most parents have, their houses. Their houses are repositories of memories. Maybe you learned to ride a bike there or watch TV while pretending to do your homework. And so the question of when to move on can be really fraught on so many levels. Tina Fallon is a real estate agent and also the founder of the 24-Hour Plays. And actually, she was my realtor and she got me my house. So I'm eternally grateful to her. Tina has dealt not just with her clients and their parents' homes, but also with her own parents' and in-laws' real estate from her husband, Sam, as they've aged and passed on.
I feel really ready to talk about this subject with you.
So
I have old parents and I have dead in-laws.
Ah, how nice.
So
You've gone through everything with your in-laws and now you're just waiting for different shoes to drop.
Exactly. and my husband's parents divorced and then very happily each remarried someone. So that's 4 parents on that side that we've been through this process, including the step-parent scenario, which a lot of people may be facing.
And they have all now passed away.
They have.
And this was over how many years?
Over about 10 years. We lost 2 of them in 2019, right before the pandemic, which I was actually really grateful for. They'd both been ill for a while, and neither Sam's mom nor his stepmom would have tolerated isolation very well. Right. So I think we felt very blessed that they, in a way, it can be a relief to not have to go through the kind of complications of being isolated and alone during a pandemic. So.
Right, exactly. Which I think is a lot why my mom decreased in her capacities, because she was just like alone and she wouldn't come. I said, "Come to my house." No, absolutely not. I will stay in my apartment. I'm very, very fearful, but I will also go shopping at the grocery store almost every day. And you're like, this is the place where you see the people that you don't know who might have COVID, but that was not part of the thinking at that point.
No, it's true. And that idea of like trying to get your elderly parents to do something that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
I know we're talking specifically about real estate, but grocery shopping is just
exactly
likely a scenario for you to be sort of up against.
So one of the things that people deal with who are dealing with their old parents that you basically have to deal with, whether your parents are in a condo or they're in a house, even if they're in an apartment that they're renting, is how to get them out of this place, or if they've passed away, how to deal with this place, which is very often stuffed full of all of the remnants of their life. When my dad passed away, my husband said, this is not like a situation of garbage bags. Like, we need a dumpster.
Yeah.
We need a dumpster outside. My dad saved every single thing, and we did that. But my mom was still around, so we didn't have to deal with selling a house or anything. But it is the big kahuna, right?
Right.
Of your parents being old.
It is. It's the museum of your parents being old.
Exactly.
The archive of their lives.
Yeah.
It's in their homes.
I know. It's so painful to go through. I mean, I'm sure some people find it like also joyous to find, little things mementos that you remember, but like the whole process of trying to figure out, what do I do with this stuff? But also, what do I do with this house? Like, do we sell the house to pay for a care home? Or are we selling the house because there's 4 siblings and everybody just wants to get a little bit of money and the parent is now deceased?
What are the different scenarios?
Yeah.
I think you're describing a number of them. And I think one of the things, a statistic that I've been really interested in lately, I think about a lot, is that the generation born between 1946 and 1964 currently owns nearly 3 in 10 of the large homes in the nation. Millennial households only own 14% of the large homes.
Yeah.
And Gen Z only owns 0.3% of the large homes. I know, Gen Z. I know.
Really, and I don't. Screwed.
You hear this. I mean, you do hear this every generation with regards to real estate, where the millennials were like, "We'll never own homes." Of course, they own homes now, but the idea that elderly people are sitting on these large homes and not selling, there's a reason for that.
Right. What is the reason?
So one reason for that is that interest rates right now are quite high. So if somebody owns something outright and they're going to sell and then move into something else and maybe borrow money to do it, they're going to have to downsize into something that's going to cost them just as much money. There is that psychological resistance to leaving a home where you feel comfortable. I think that's really, really powerful. But the other reason is that, especially if you get to the point where you're like, well, I don't have that much time left. Why sell now? If I hang on to it and my children inherit this, then they will benefit from the step-up basis.
Okay, explain this to me. Because every time somebody says step-up basis to me, my brain just freezes and will not accept learning this.
Well, let's talk about step-up basis.
Yeah.
So in terms of inherited wealth in this country, there are a number of assets which include certain, and you should probably talk to a financial planner. Just to be clear, I'm not a financial planner.
Do exactly what she says after you listen to this podcast.
I'm not a financial planner. I do not know. But certain things, when you inherit them, they reset the basis. So if your parents bought stocks, for example, in 1959, and I'm just made your parents very old. So if your parents bought stocks in 1979, if they sell those stocks, if they're alive and they sell those stocks today,
at the price that they bought it.
Yes,
so they
exactly.
bought, whatever. Whenever Apple started, they bought Apple at $1.
Right. They bought Apple for $1, and now it's worth, I don't know, anything about stocks, it's worth $1 million.
Something along those lines.
So then you would owe capital gains if you sold on the difference between the price you paid for it and the price you sold for it. So the price you paid for it is the basis price.
Okay.
So if they bought a home in 1975 for $60,000 and it's now worth $1 million, they would potentially own capital gains on the profit from the difference between the basis and what they paid. So, and if
These
your
are
primary,
your parents or the inheritor?
The parents. So if they sell it before they die,
if you die, that's all wiped away.
Right. Because if you die and you pass the asset, be it your Apple stocks or your home, along to your children, the basis, meaning the purchase price, the basis price of the asset, resets to the value that asset had at the time of the person's death.
So when somebody says you want to get the step up in basis on this house, what they mean is have your parent die, basically. Have your parent die is the big takeaway.
Yeah.
Have your parent die. You will inherit the house, you and your siblings or whoever is going to inherit the house.
Right.
And you won't have to pay capital gains tax, which can be as much as what, 30%?
It's actually closer to 20%.
Capital gains is basically the phrase for your asset has gone up in value and you must pay us something.
Right. You're paying on the profit.
Right.
The actual
Capital
gains.
gains means profit.
Yes.
Profit tax,
Right.
basically.
And this is, I think, one of the reasons why the American dream is so powerful in this country and why this sort of concept of home ownership is really powerful in the United States in a way that it isn't in places like Vienna.
Right.
There are genuine tax incentives to ownership of a home. And there are, when you can pass that asset along to your children, it really multiplies in terms of the value to your family. And so when you see, one of the ways that wealth stays concentrated among a relatively small portion of the population is that, home ownership is a big piece of what feels to me like a massive tax dodge.
Right.
And I, as a real estate agent, this is I don't know if it's clear. Like, this isn't something that I believe in fundamentally, but it is something that I feel like, as long as this is the case in this country, I want to make that available to more people who have been locked out of home ownership historically.
Yeah.
Capital gains are taxes on your profit.
Right.
So if there is no profit, you don't have to pay capital gains.
Right.
If there's less than $500,000 in profit, you don't have to pay capital gains. So if they've already made more than $500,000 on the sale of their home,
they're pretty psyched.
It's a good thing to be in that situation where you have to give 20% of it back to the government that has, made it possible for you to live in this beautiful home your whole life. So that's, I mean, cry me a river.
So your parents, where are they? Where are they living?
My parents live in Southwest Florida, right in the direct line of hurricanes most recently.
Oh, fabulous.
They do spend the summers up with us. We have a house on Long Island that is really specifically designed to be a 3-generation home so that my kids can be there, we can be there, and my parents can be there. So,
meaning that you have like different floors, or you have?
There's different floors. There's a first floor suite for my parents, so they can have and my dad can use just an open shower with a seat in it and grab bars so they can feel safe. And then my kids, when they are home, can have their own rooms and their own spaces. And it's funny, we thought we would sell this house in order to pay for the kids to go to college, but it turns out we still need a 3-generation home.
Yeah.
And so we refinanced the house instead of selling it in order to generate some income for college.
Right.
So it's a great, we feel really lucky that we have it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that we planned it that way, but it turns out that it's working really well. And it means my parents have a place to stay that isn't Florida in the summertime.
Right. And so is your dad mobile, or what?
He is. He's had a couple of strokes and he's still quite mobile and he's still pretty, functional, but it is harder for him to go up and down stairs. He uses a walker.
Right.
So he can get around.
What was the refinancing experience like?
That was at a time when interest rates were still quite low. And so instead of selling the house, we were like, well, let's sell it in 2 stages. We'll sell part of it now, basically back to the bank and get cash out that we can use to pay our kids' college tuition. And then eventually we'll sell the house at some point down the line.
So that's basically like getting another mortgage. Like, it's that kind of experience.
Yeah. So you have to go through the whole reapply and do all that and pay your closing costs again.
Oh, how fun.
I know, it's fun. But at that time, our interest rate had come down.
Yeah.
So it meant that our monthly costs didn't increase substantially.
Okay.
But for a house that we paid $394,000 for, we took out then we had our mortgage became a mortgage for $500,000.
Okay, I see.
So our house became more expensive than it was when we bought it.
Okay. Yeah, but it was worth it to you. And
it was.
When you deal with your elderly parents, you have so much paperwork that you have to do at all times that I actually feel like when I applied for my mortgage, it was so painful. And it was just like a million forms that had to be scanned and then more forms. And then you're like, no, now update your bank accounts for this month because this has taken so long. We need to update it. But at this point, I feel like I spend 20 hours a week as like the bookkeeper for my mom. So none of that would faze me.
It's good. It's good training.
It is. It's very good training for taking over somebody's finances almost completely.
It's challenging. I think in many ways, the hardest thing about selling a home is parting with the contents of the home, more so than the home itself. My mother-in-law was in a rental that she had moved into with her second husband, who had been there for 40 years. And so it was part of Columbia Housing. So he had worked at Columbia, and they had this amazing 9-room apartment on the Upper West Side, and that they were paying under market rates for. And she died in December 2019. And then shortly after that, we went into lockdown.
Pandemic. Yeah.
And it took us, the family, so our side of the family, so her side of the family, and then her husband's side of the family, it took until September of 2020 to be able to clear the apartment. So it took months to be able to clear the apartment.
How did you do it? Were you part of it? Or
I was part of it, but the whole family really came together.
Yeah.
And Sam's youngest brother did a lot of that work. So there was a period of people coming in and just saying, well, what do we want? And she died in the apartment. And that same morning, we were there. She was gone. We're looking at the apartment, and people's thinking about what it is that we want from here, what is meaningful. And for whatever reason, my husband said, I want the toaster oven. Like, he took the toaster oven. Grief is weird. And we still have the toaster oven. That was just the sort of one thing that you, like Steve Martin in The Jerk, like you just walk out with this one thing.
Yeah.
But I think if you're forced to make those decisions right at that moment, you might make some that are questionable.
Right.
So it is nice to be able to, if you can afford to, have the time to go through in a really thoughtful way. It's never going to be easy. And it's always going to be a certain amount of, grieving that goes along with those things. We imbue all those objects with value.
Totally.
But by the time you're done with it, you're really done. And I think none of us had any real attachment to the apartment itself once it was clear of their possessions.
Right. And so what do you tell people when you go in, when they say, we want to sell this house, and you show up and the house is, like somebody was living in there until 1 second ago, and there's like a dirty teacup in the sink, and there's a million books with dust on them that nobody's looked at for 20 years, but nobody's moved out. Like, what do you say when they're like, we want to sell the house? And you're like, you have some things to do first.
Right. Well, some of it depends on how much time they have. So if there is a home that they can't afford to carry, then we may have to move things out more quickly.
Right.
So there is the immediate things where you can just get rid of the junk. And if you can just come through and throw out what can be thrown out, and, you get a dumpster, you get a junk luggers type company.
What's junk luggers?
Junk luggers it's a little overpriced, but I use them when I have to because they just show up when you need them. Junk luggers are folks who'll just show up with a truck and they'll take all your stuff out.
Yeah, and it's such a hard thing to be like, oh, this is my parents' life and it's worth like zero.
Exactly.
That's crazy. So what about a rental? You, as the heir, do you have to pay the rent, or it's just like a landlord understands the lease has now been broken, or how does that work?
This happened when my aunt died in February of 2020, again, right before lockdown. She was in the Bay Area, and her direct heirs came out, cleared the entire apartment, and they were in and out in 3 days.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you can be ruthless about it,
right,
that's great, because there really wasn't any money left to pay the rent for an extended period of time.
I see. Yeah. So on the flip side of this, if you're looking for a house, do people really read the obituaries to see like what houses might become available? I've heard that.
100%.
Oh my God.
Now, it's so mostly, gruesome. I know. Well, I think in real estate has a terrible reputation, but in any field, there are bottom feeders and lowlifes.
You need to know. This is how you get the good goss.
They do.
Word on the street.
If you have ever experienced this in your family, when there is a public notice of a death, you will instantly start receiving letters. Sometimes something slipped under your door if you're in an apartment building, from people who are interested in purchasing your home at rock bottom prices just to take care of this for you. But yes, there are, and I think a lot of speculators, a lot of real estate investors actually have staffs of people who will sort through those notices on a daily basis.
Yeah. That, I mean, it makes sense that's a way to get a bargain, I guess, because people are just like sort of in shock. They want to get it done quickly for all the reasons we've discussed. And so, yeah. What do you feel like more people need to know about this? Because you obviously know a lot about it because you've had to deal with it professionally and personally, but for people just going through it for the first time.
I think my sister is a hospice social worker.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she is in Oregon. And so she deals with a lot of this from a kind of social work standpoint. I actually think a lot of what we do in real estate is like social work.
Yeah.
It's like managing paperwork. We're helping people through these really difficult transitions.
It's therapy. Yeah.
And one of the things that my sister experiences all the time is that people who are going into hospice and find that there's no funds for that are shocked because they say, I worked, I paid taxes all my life. How is there no money for this? But I think people are shocked at how expensive it is to die in this country. So I wish more people understood how expensive end-of-life care is and that maybe you want to sell the home now so that everybody in the family feels comfortable with those expenses.
I see. I mean, in a lot of cases, it's not so easy with different heirs, with siblings, blah, 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 blah. There's the sibling that doesn't want to deal with anything and lives really far away. And then there's the overburdened sibling who's way too close. And should that person who's overburdened get the same amount as the other sibling who hasn't done anything? Well, this is what the will says. It says it's equal. I mean, right? When
Absolutely.
the house is needing to be sold.
Especially when there are multiple heirs, they're not always in agreement about what to do with the home. If there is an heir who has been a live-in caregiver and has been living in the home, or has just been a live-in freeloader who's been living in the home, we have those as well. We have such a hard time talking about this, and we certainly don't want to talk about it in front of our families. And it's funny, you're talking about understanding what the terms of a will might be. A lot of people have no idea what the terms of their parents' wills are.
Right.
So if that's something that they're willing to share with you in advance, that would be really helpful for doing some planning.
Right.
And I think it depends on, a lot of it is very cultural. Like some people don't want to have those conversations, but also make sure your parents have a will. That's something that's really useful to have. I mean, there are a lot of assets that can transfer without a will, but a home is a challenging one. It does have to go through probate. There's you can't usually sell the home right away. There's a process that the home has to go
so it gets
through.
held up, and you're still paying.
You're still paying.
Yeah, right.
You're still paying at very least taxes.
Right.
Yes, keeping the heat on, all of that. And if you have a sibling who is, say, still living in the home, that can be really challenging. I mean, there's a worse. There was a story that happened earlier this year where there were some heirs on Long Island who were in disagreement about selling a home, and the heir who had been living in the home and didn't have any idea what he was going to do after the home was sold, murdered his family members.
Oh my God.
When they came to discuss selling the home with a real estate agent. So that's a kind of worst case scenario, is that, so don't let it get to that, I guess is an advice I would give.
All right, Tina Fallon, thank you so much for coming on to My Parents Are Old. This has been an enlightening and not very depressing conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing this. I think these are really important conversations to have.
Thanks everybody for listening to So Your Parents Are Old from Campside Media. If you like the show, please tell your siblings and your friends who are going through this too. And please hit the subscribe or the follow button in your podcast app. In Apple Podcasts, that's up at the top right of the podcast player. And if you want even more from us, including behind-the-scenes access and episode updates, head over to joinparents.com.